blood and cricket and blood and hockey seem to be able to flow together. India will be playing Pakistan in the Asia Cup, the cricket tournament, the ICC cricket tournament in September. That's going to be in the UAE. And now today we had word that the Pakistan hockey team has been given the clearances, the requisite permissions from different ministries, from the Sports Ministry, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of External Affairs, to travel to India later this month to take part in the Hockey Asia Cup. Now, this is a blatant disregard for what happened in Pahalgam. A blatant disregard, really, for not just the 26 people who lost their lives that day on the 22nd of April, but also a disregard of the stand and the policy and the mood of the nation, really, in the aftermath of Pahalgam, in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. Is this because one arm of government does not know what is happening with the other arm? Or is this that there is a confusion in India's Pakistan policy? Or is this carrot and stick, as you would have it in diplomacy? But first, I want to bring you up to speed with the decision that was taken today by the Sports Ministry, of course, in conjunction with permissions, the requisite permissions that were given by both the MHA and the MEA, allowing the Pakistan hockey team to travel to India. Just a couple of days ago, we had word that the Indian cricket team and the Pakistan cricket team will be taking part in the ICC-sponsored Asia Cup. Now, many questions are being raised about the mixed messaging that's coming in from the central government. Now, let's bring you up to speed with what these four different items are, or these four different pieces of news are, because in the immediate aftermath of the Pahalgam attack, the Indus Water Treaty was put in abeyance. Remember, this is the first time since 1960, when this treaty came into effect, that waters was stopped. The waters of the Indus rivers and its tributaries were stopped from being sent to from India to Pakistan. This was one big measure that India took in the aftermath of the Pahalgam attacks. Perhaps the biggest decision, because India had been loath to doing this. They wanted to make a distinction between the Pakistani state and Pakistani civilians. But finally, the logic being blood and water cannot flow together. Therefore, India put the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. Now, today we had word that the Pakistan hockey team will be visiting India. Now, remember, Pakistan is not even a particularly, big country when it comes to playing hockey. They consistently lose to India, but for some reason today the decision was taken. Sports Ministry has confirmed it, that yes, the Pakistan hockey team will be coming to India because India is the host, and it will be taking part in the Asia Cup hockey. Also, this comes on the back of several media accounts, whether it is YouTube accounts, Instagram accounts of various Pakistani actors, YouTubers, influencers of all kinds, was taken down. It was banned again in the aftermath of Pahalgam. Just yesterday, there was confusion that a lot of these accounts got restored, seemingly the ones of Shahid Afridi, Shoaib Akhtar, Pakistani cricketers. That was restored because later it was discovered that some bureaucrat in one of the ministries, the MeitY, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, said that the deadline was June 30th. By the time it was 1st of July, that deadline had expired, and therefore the blocked content became unblocked again. And then there was huge backlash on Twitter and other social media, after which, again today, they have all been put back on the blocked list. But at the same time, now India will be playing, the cricket team, the Indian cricket team will be playing against the Pakistan cricket team. It's an ICC-run ICC event, the Asia Cup in Dubai and the UAE later on. The interesting thing is, India had drawn that distinction even before the Pahalgam attack, that while India will not play Pakistan bilaterally, Pakistan will not be allowed to come to India, India will not go to Pakistan, no bilateral series between India and Pakistan, but we will play in multilateral tournaments like ICC World Cup, T20 World Cup, and of course the Asia Cup. But now that logic seems to be extending to the hockey teams as well, both for the Junior World Cup and of course for the Asia Cup, for which the team will be coming soon. Now, here's the thing, like I kept saying, there was a tenuous distinction that the government drew even before Pahalgam happened. As far as bilateral tournaments are concerned, India does not play Pakistan. It does not play Pakistan in India. It does not play in Pakistan. In fact, India has not gone on a tour to Pakistan since I think 2004-05, so in the last 20 years. India does not play a bilateral series with Pakistan even at a neutral venue. In fact, like I said, the last bilateral cricket series between the two countries was the 2012-2013 season. But the government says that multilateral events That is a different ball game because there are costs involved, there are penalties involved. India, for example, will not get to host ICC events if it boycotts an ICC event or an ICC game against Pakistan. So denying participation to a country in a global or a continental competition, that can have serious scrutiny from international federations, and that could also affect India's chances of hosting future tournaments, which is why India plays Pakistan at neutral venues, allows the Pakistan team to travel to India, like for example in the 2023 One Day World Cup, where Pakistan came to Ahmedabad to the Narendra Modi Stadium in the One Day World Cup and lost that game against India. So this distinction now seems to have been taken to the next level because it's not just for cricket. Now this seems to be applicable to hockey as well. So the hockey team, the Pakistan hockey team, will be coming later on for the Asia Cup, and later in November, the Junior World Cup, which India is hosting, they will be allowed to come as well. Now, you can call us because, there seems to be confusion as to how to deal with Pakistan. On the one hand, you stop water, but cricket seems to be fine. On the one hand, civilian airspace is shut. It's still not been opened by Pakistan government. As a result, Indian Airlines are having to take a much longer circuitous route, spend a lot more on jet fuel, and yet hockey is fine. So why is there this inconsistency of policy? Call us on the number that's flashing on your screen. I'm sure a lot of our viewers have very, very strong and passionate views on this, particularly in the aftermath of Pahalgam, in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. All the more so has this move by the government become tone deaf. A.B. Subbaiah is former Indian hockey goalkeeper and coach. Arjuna Awadi is joining us. Kailash Adhikari, political analyst, is also joining us. Mr. Subbaiah, let me start with you as a former Indian hockey player. Is this okay, asking the Pakistan hockey team to come to India because India is the host, and this whole distinction about multilateral tournaments as opposed to bilateral tournaments? We will not play them bilaterally, but in multilateral international tournaments, we'll have to play them. We don't have a choice. Is that a good enough distinction?
No, sir, it is. I don't agree with this because nation comes first. Because our people's because what all we have gone through last couple of months or many years is that we should not have any sporting connection with Pakistan. Even we can make out Pakistan is not such a world force like earlier when they were a better state. It was better run country. That time they were world champions in hockey as well as cricket or in squash. But nowadays they are nothing because the whole country is failed because they are all behind terrorism. And for us, it is a country first. Yeah. We as a sportsman, we are all valued. Representing India is the first. So in my feeling, is my belief that we should not play any sporting event with them in our Indian soil.
Okay, let me ask Kailash Adhikari. So what then is a possible justification, Kailash? I've said, even before Pahalgam happened, even before Operation Sindoor, the distinction of bilateral versus multilateral was tenuous. At least I didn't find that, credible enough to keep up with. But now all the more so, after Pahalgam, after Operation Sindoor, which mind you, by the way, has not concluded, it's only been put on pause. What is the justification for India and Pakistan playing in the ICC Asia Cup in September in Dubai? What is the justification for allowing the Pakistan hockey team to come to India to take part in the Asia Cup, which India is hosting? It doesn't make any sense.
Zakka, two things. After the barbaric attack that happened in Pahalgam, India responded very swiftly and very strongly, and through Operation Sindoor. And the message was loud and clear that India will not tolerate. And when Honorable Prime Minister, gave his address, he pointed out certain factors which said that, we will not tolerate terrorism, and this is the new India which will give their answer back, which was never the case before, prior to 2014. Now, when it comes to, and so we have given a befitting reply. Now, when it comes to, and the next point that I'm sharing, it's on a lighter note, Zakka, that it's good that if India, Pakistan are playing, because then we get another opportunity to defeat Pakistan. And this is just on a lighter note, because be it cricket or any other field, India and the Indian team is far more superior than Pakistan. So we get another opportunity to beat Pakistan. I believe it's an Operation Sindoor on field, the way Pakistan loses as against India. But this is just on a lighter note. Now, coming to the main main point, as I said, Zakka. Yes, the India's treaty is suspended, and this is how India will retaliate. This is the new India. Now, if the government has decided that, and if you see when the recent the matches that were played, the venue was Pakistan for the ICC Champions Trophy, but India put its foot down. No, I will play on a neutral venue. And ICC also had to agree to the fact that what BCCI had sent in a request, and the India-Pakistan match was held in Dubai. And here, India-Pakistan, you see, whether it's a cricket match, always it's held on a neutral ground. Now, whether it's hockey and other playing fields, so a lot of factors do get considered, Zakka, as you mentioned in your opening address as well, that if India does not play a certain amount of matches, then as a team, also in the ICC, where what rights does it get, what kind of blacklisting does it get? So all these factors have to be considered. Having said that, nation is first for everyone, even for the government, even for we as citizens, even for you, Zakka, even for my learned co-panelists. Yes, nation is above all. So, but India has definitely given a befitting reply as well, Zakka.
Okay, let me go across to our first caller. The number is flashing on your screen, so please call us. I'm sure a lot of our viewers who are watching this broadcast will have a lot of views on this. Mr. K. Rajendran is calling us from Bangalore. Mr. Rajendran, good evening. What is your view? Should India be playing Pakistan in cricket, in hockey, in other sports, while all of this terror stuff is still unresolved?
Well, good evening, sir. Sir, we should remember the Modi has said some 3-4 words now. Water and blood cannot flow together.
Yeah.
Water and trade, trade and this one cannot go together. Likewise, this applies to this also.
Yeah.
There is no sports and that is a terrorist activity should not go, because Pakistan is telling all the false thing about India. Even though India has got a solid proof for Operation Sindoor and other things, Okay. And for the past 20 years we have tolerated. So the question is, now just for the sake of playing game and all, I agree. Spirit of game should be followed, but it has to have some red line.
All right, Mr. Rajendran, thank you for your call. I want to go across to one more caller. Dr. Jagannathan is calling us from Hyderabad. Yes, Dr. Jagannathan.
Yeah. Actually, playing with Pakistan at this stage is not a welcome step.
Okay.
Because they are continuously bleeding India, and the recent Operation Sindoor also this one has not yet gone down. So people are worried that why we have to play with them, because we have several agreements with them have been banned.
Yeah.
And the people of India are not at all comfortable with the way the Pakistan is handling India. They are sending their terrorists into the country, and that should be stopped.
Dr. Jagannathan, thank you for your call. I want to go back to Kailash. Kailash, so, Indus Water Treaty has been suspended. Civilian airspace has still not been opened. Visas are cancelled. The diplomatic staff have been downgraded down to, I think, about, barely about single digits, maybe low double digits, as it were. None of this has changed, but on the sporting arena, on the cricket pitch, on the hockey turf, it's business as usual. I mean, that can't be the case, right?
Zakka, it's not business as usual. See, firstly, when it comes to the hockey, that the Pakistan hockey team is visiting India next month, we should all understand that India is hosting the junior hockey, the entire tournament. So India is also a host country where it's not just Pakistan, it's other countries playing. And if Pakistan is a qualified team to play in that, so that amount of consideration the government must have put in. Secondly, when it comes to the September Asia Cup, it's at a neutral venue. Now, it's a tournament where certain, the entire federation, let's say if it's a cricket, then it's ICC. If there are certain bands which are being framed where all the cricketing nations countries are there, and also BCC, India as a cricketing nation is a part of that, and if an India-Pakistan cricket match is there, so naturally it's played at a neutral country. We have not put our guns down and saying that we are going to Pakistan.
The confusion is this. One second. The confusion is this, and I'll ask Mr. Subbaiah this. Just in the last few days, we had this controversy where after Pahalgam, all these Pakistani YouTubers, influencers, actors, all the accounts were blocked, and rightfully so. What happened after that was it was supposed to be a ban of, I think, 3 months. 30th June came, 1st of July came. By 1st of July, many of these accounts were unfrozen. So you suddenly started seeing Shahid Afridi's posts in India. You started seeing Shoaib Akhtar's posts in India. And those people have not changed their behavior. Mr. Afridi was still abusing India, the Indian government, Indian people. It's not like he's changed his behavior. Then suddenly, there's this backlash on Twitter. People are like, what the hell is going on? Why is this happening? And then again, the government blocks the unblocked account. So clearly, there seems to be a degree of dissonance or a degree, Mr. Subbiah, of left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. That can't be a policy. We have to be very clear about what our policy is.
Yes, Zakka, I'm also surprised. Like, we are taken a very tough stand during the Operation Sindoor or after the Pahalgam attack. But see, certain they're participating in Asia Cup or Junior World Cup. Definitely, there is some norms which we can't violate. But the Pakistan should have taken the same stand. They said next 3-4 years they don't play in India. They want to play all the sporting event in the neutral facilities. What happened now? So that is the main thing actually from them. But Indian government also, why they're getting loosening their grip on the whole thing, we don't know, because Shahid Afridi's tweets, everything is against India, and I don't know. Being a sportsman, he's talks all kind of rubbish, and we take it.
I think that's a great point that you made. At least India is drawing the distinction that, look, we won't play Pakistan in Pakistan, we'll play them in a neutral venue. Pakistan doesn't seem to have any such qualms. For the One-Day World Cup in 2023, they came to India, lost. Again, now for the Junior World Cup, the Asia Cup, they're going to be coming to India. Mr. Ravi is our next caller. He's calling us from Bangalore. Mr. Ravi, yes, good evening. What is your view on this?
Good evening, Zakka. And I mean, if it's no, Zakka. This is my opinion, because I have an excellent example. Javed Miandad is a relative of Dawood Ibrahim. So should we allow Javed Miandad to come into India and then say commentary for a cricket match? No, because he does not come only as a commentator or a sports. He will definitely bring in all the rubbish what is there from Pakistan. So there are a lot of things. Afridi had a different views when there was a war going on. So sport, whether it is sports or culture or anything, I would say for the next 1 decade, block everything, and let's see how they behave. Let's see how their civil society behaves. I mean, there are a lot of people in India who are flagging for Palestinians and other things and all, which is very far away from India. But let the Pakistani the civil government, the people of Pakistan, let them rise at least once and then show that what Pakistan government or Pakistan military is doing wrong.
Ravi,
Pakistan is only aimed to...
Yeah, I want to give Kailash the final word. India and Pakistan are not the only two countries that went to war recently. You had Iran and Israel also. This is akin to asking the Israeli and Iranian football teams to play a match tomorrow. I mean, would they? I don't think Israel would agree. Kailash?
Zakka, whether Israel would agree or not agree, or Iran would agree or not agree, I mean, it depends upon their diplomatic decision. And it is not here that India has taken any soft stand or not. I mean, we are very clear when it comes to all the measures that India has taken post the Pahalgam attack. And we are very clear about what we did with Operation Sindoor, and which we demonstrated to the entire world. With that, the trade ties or the Indus Water Treaty. And it is not about that sport is an exception. No, sport is not an exception. And I don't believe that the government treats sports as an exception when it comes to national security and national interest. But we must understand one thing here, that India is hosting a particular tournament, and it's not just about
what about all this confusion around these YouTubers and
that it will not going to Pakistan to play.
What about that? What about that confusion? The YouTubers and influencers, you block them, then some bureaucrat in the ministry says, okay, it was for a 3-month period, now we unblock them. Then there is huge Twitter backlash and anger against it, and rightfully so. Then you block them again. I mean, what sort of message does it send?
Such decisions are for a particular period which have to be reviewed. And then there is an entire machinery which reviews it after a particular period of time. And and it's not just about this. There are so many factors. There are so many orders which come in for a particular time period, and then it is left to review, which the government does very well.
Look, I'm very clear, and I hope our viewers also share this. My view is that if you've taken a position that you're not going to let water, you're not going to have trade, you're not going to have civilian airspace opened, then there is no business to be playing sport, whether it's cricket, whether it is hockey, and all these tenuous distinctions about, oh, we're not playing bilateral, we're playing multilateral, doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, though, Kailash Adhikari, Mr. Subbiah, for joining us. I want to move on to the other big story, which has, again, elicited a huge amount of backlash. And thankfully, we can report to you tonight there's been some course correction by the Delhi government. This was over the new no-fuel policy to overage vehicles. The Delhi government has now softened its stand. Remember, this was a campaign that CNN News18 had taken over the last few days. So the order to petrol pumps and fuel stations not to give petrol to cars that are older than 15 years or diesel to cars that are older than 10 years, that policy now has been put under suspension. Delhi's Environment Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa has confirmed that no vehicle in Delhi starting tomorrow will be impounded at fuel stations anymore. He has also said that the government has written to the Commission for Air Quality Management, CAQM, which is appointed and supervised by the Supreme Court. They've asked for a rethink on the end-of-life vehicles, as the process of identifying these vehicles has been rather challenging. The decision is now in the hands of the CAQM, whether or not to tweak this policy or to stop this policy or to find some kind of alternative to this policy, and if not, how to ensure the smooth implementation of this policy. So let's bring you up to speed with what the Delhi government said. What is the letter that's been written to the CAQM? In that letter, the Delhi government has said, hold the order that denies fuels to end-of-life vehicles via the ANPR surveillance system, which the Delhi government now says is not ready, there are technical glitches, and there is public outcry over the move. Also, that there are technological flaws in the ANPR cameras. The ANPR cameras, their sensors are faulty, their speakers are non-functional, and there is no integration with neighboring states and their databases. No ANPR installation is there in any of the neighboring NCR towns. So the Delhi government and the ministers there want the NCR towns to first install this and then this to be applied to Delhi. So the enforcement can only happen after a phased rollout and the correction of these glitches. But here's the real dichotomy in this policy and the real, complete bizarre nature of this policy, because car owners are also citing how this law, this practice has been unfair to begin with. Because by national norms, vehicles in India, anywhere in the country really, are registered and you pay road tax for 15 years. But in Delhi, via this 2015 order by the National Green Tribunal, which has imposed a blanket ban on any diesel vehicle after 10 years and of course petrol vehicles after 15 years in order to fight air pollution. Now, it is not anyone's intention to say that that fight against air pollution needs to be lightened or needs to be not taken as seriously. But is this the best way to go about that fight against air pollution? So what then is the solution? Instead of having a blanket ban, experts are saying that there are certain alternatives. Number one, you actually go and test. Like you have a pollution certificate which you have to renew every single year for cars that are above 10 years, diesel cars, and petrol cars that are above 15 years, have special actual emission tests and certify instead of having this kind of a blanket ban. There are cars that are fit to fly and there are cars that are not fit to fly. Also, you can ask these cars to start installing new filters, newer exhaust systems to meet the emission norms for cars above 10 years for diesel and cars above 15 for petrol. Better incentives when it comes to the scrapping policy. You give the old car owners higher compensation, better tax rebates. Also prevent the spillover into neighboring states and thereby, circumventing this policy. So if you can't drive a 10-year-old diesel car in NCR, what most people do is they take it to Uttar Pradesh hinterlands or Bihar or Bengal or wherever, anywhere else in the country, re-register the car and ply it as though there is no problem in any of those states.
इस स्थिति में होंगे, पर मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं, माननीय दिल्ली की मुख्यमंत्री रेखा गुप्ता जी ने बड़े स्पष्ट तौर पर आज इस बात को दोबारा से सुनिश्चित किया है। दिल्ली के लोगों को जो कठिनाइयां 10 साल की बीमारी कारण आ रही हैं, उनकी गाड़ियों को जब्त किया जा रहा है। इन सब के लिए वो जो भी करना पड़ेगा, एड़ी चोटी तक का उनका अगर जोर लगाना पड़ेगा तो वो भी लगाएंगे। हम दिल्ली के वातावरण को भी साफ करेंगे और दिल्ली की गाड़ियों को भी नहीं जब्त होने देंगे। ये हमारी दिल्ली की मुख्यमंत्री रेखा गुप्ता जी का दिल्ली के लोगों के साथ संकल्प है। जब हमने सीकेएम को बताया कि जब पड़ोसी शहरों में 1 नवंबर हो या जो मार्च का 7 का उन्होंने सभी एनसीआर का कहा है। अच्छा तो होगा कि जब सारे एनसीआर में ही लागू हो तभी से दिल्ली में लागू हो, अगर वरना पार्टली इंप्लीमेंट वो करेंगे गुड़गांव में, वो जो आदेश करेंगे मानेंगे, लेकिन उसका नुकसान क्या होगा, फिर भी और दिक्कतें कॉम्प्लेक्स बढ़ जाएंगी।
Moving on from Delhi to Telangana, on the 30th of June, a little after 9 a.m., an explosion rocked a chemical factory in Telangana's Sangareddy district. The Sigachi Industries is a pharmaceutical company that's been in operation for over 3 decades. That factory now has been pretty much reduced to rubble. 143 workers were inside the factory when the explosion happened. It led to a massive blaze. It took many hours to douse those flames. Unfortunately, 40 of those 143 employees died in that tragedy. What is worse is that many believe that this tragedy could have been easily avoided. Safety norms were flouted, faulty temperature sensors, failed alarms. All of these were noted after the explosion. And even worse, it's been 4 days since the tragedy. Not a single arrest has been made so far. Now, in the aftermath of these glaring lapses that have come to the fore, it leaves one wondering if the tragedy was a result of gross negligence. Firstly, the Sigachi Industries factory was operating without a valid fire non-objection certificate, as has been said by the district fire officer. Secondly, the fire department officials have confirmed that there was non-compliance with fire norms in the factory. And thirdly, the lack of risk management and safety measures are also under the scan.
Speaking to CNN News 18, Telangana Labour Minister Mr. Vivek Venkateswamy clearly stated that the Sigachi management has to take the responsibility for the explosion which was happened in their company premises and caused for the death of almost 40 people and several injuries. And moreover, he stated that they have already registered a case against the Sigachi management, but they have not mentioned any names. But yesterday, government also constituted a committee headed by one of the senior scientists and with the 3 other members. They will go for the complete in-depth investigation on this entire incident. Based on that report, they have given 1 month of time bound also. Based on that particular report, the government will book further cases, and if needed, they will alter the FIR also. Based on the recommendations, they wanted to take some precautionary measures which will be applicable for all the companies. These kind of incidents should not repeat in future. So accordingly, they are taking all the measures and all the steps. And as of now, the government announced 1 crore rupees of the ex gratia to the people who died in this incident, and 10 lakh rupees for the severe injuries and 5 lakh rupees for the partially injury personals. So already Sigachi management announced 1 crore rupees so that the government need not to pay anything for them, and accordingly, even the Sigachi management is already paying the hospital bills also. As of now, this is not an issue, but here the thing is, Sigachi management is completely differing with the government. They are already taken all the measures to prevent these kind of incidents.
Now, what is even more stark is the Telangana Labour Minister Vivek Venkateswamy has said that the management is responsible for the mishap, and if that's the case, why has no one from the management been named in the FIR? Why has no one from the management been arrested yet? Because it's been 4 days and 40 people are dead. The Telangana Labour Minister also claims that safety guidelines were ignored by the administration. Again, why is the district fire officer still out there? Why is the factory's person who's in charge, why are they still out there? Why didn't the state act against all of these government officials, despite knowing, as the Labour Minister is now claiming, that these norms were flouted in the Sigachi chemical factory? What's even more shocking is that the minister further claimed that there is no urgency to arrest the MD of the company, as he claims he's not a flight risk. He won't flee from the state or the country. But how can the managers and the owners of this top pharma company not be a flight risk? And why is the Labour Minister the judge of that? Let's listen into what he had to say in the first place.
It is the management's responsibility. So the Labour Inspector, on his regular inspections, already gave a note what all needs to be done within the factory. So here, to blame the government is not correct. The plant management should have taken more measures to see that such kind of incidents don't happen. And we are waiting for the inquiry report to take place. And it will come shortly, and necessary action will definitely be taken.
So as India and the United States, the trade talks enter the final stage, government sources have revealed to CNN News 18 that both sides are showing rare flexibility to break the deadlock. India is likely to offer tariff relief on select American electronics. That's a move aimed at easing trade flows. In return, the United States is considering concessions on genetically modified agricultural products as well as limited access to American dairy exports into India. However, India has firmly rejected broader dairy access, citing the need to protect millions of livelihoods in the domestic dairy industry. India is also pushing hard for greater access for its labor-intensive exports, including textiles, jewelry, carpets, gems, and footwear. With both sides showing signs of flexibility, a long-awaited trade deal could now be within reach. However, agriculture and dairy remain key red lines for India. Sources further say that India has made it clear that opening up the dairy sector is not on the table, as it's a cornerstone of the rural economy. The government maintains that farmer interests will not be compromised under any circumstances.
These tariffs are a way for countries to meet us at a place of fairness, that the United States has an open economy, but what we have seen is that there are unfair trade policies that have really impacted U.S. farmers, industries. And so we want to see trade that is fair, that is reciprocal, working closely. India is an essential partner in the Indo-Pacific, it's an essential partner in the Quad, and we fully expect that all of our partners can understand why this is so important to an America First agenda, that we look for trade policies that really have a fairness, reciprocal, balanced way to ensure that all parties are benefiting.
I want to go across to our Sanjay Suri, who's tracking this story. So Sanjay, today is the 3rd and tomorrow is, of course, the American Independence Day. Can we expect an announcement by Trump or by the White House spokesperson today? Because if it doesn't happen today, then I guess we'll have to wait till next week to get past the Independence Day weekend.
Well, the first announcement Trump will want to make is on that big, beautiful bill on the economy. That is going through the Congress. We've had hours of speech from the Democrat leader in the House. So pass that and pass a vote that will go the Republican way, as the government believes in the U.S. and as is widely expected. That will be the priority for Trump. But of course, then this is one deal he'll certainly want to announce. And this is where there is an issue. Simply his desire to make an announcement. An announcement from Trump is never short of a grand announcement. We know, and as you've been reporting, that dairy products is not something that India can give way on easily at all. This could affect hundreds of millions of Indian farmers on the margin, because the American pricing structure is fed by subsidies, and that can lead to dumping that the Indian consumer may not be able to deal with, and more than the consumer, the farmers and the producers may not be able to deal with. So that's an area of difference, and we've got to see how that's negotiated. That certainly is a very strong push from the US. There's a strong pushback against it from India. We'll have to see how that plays out, and whether Trump would then be willing to make an announcement of a deal that's necessarily a compromise deal, and not just agricultural goods and dairy products, also the auto industry. India cannot possibly do all that the US wants. But if there is flexibility on both sides and some flexibility from the US, then we could be looking at an announcement.
All right, Sanjay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. You also saw that graphic. The 4 items which seem to be the sticking points are corn or maize, soybean, ethanol, and of course you have the dairy products that Sanjay was referring to a moment ago, which is cheese and milk and other dairy products. Here's a quick explainer on what these sticking points are and why there is so much back and forth between India and the United States. I've tried to break it down in as simple a language as possible. All right, so what are the sticking points in the Indo-US bilateral trade arrangement that both sides have been negotiating for a while? The number 1 point is on agri-imports. It boils down to 3 or 4 items. Number 1, corn or maize. Number 2, soya bean. These are items which India has very little import from the United States. Much of it is homegrown. And the other contentious part in agri-imports is the United States wants India to import some genetically modified crop, including in these 2 that I just mentioned, that is corn or maize, as well as soybean. The second one is market access for US dairy items, cheese, milk, and other dairy products. One of the concerns that India has is some of the bovine feed is made out of blood and made out of other carnivorous elements, which is meant for the feed that is given to the cattle. India wants to avoid that kind of stuff as well. And number 3 there are two sectors that India has concerns in terms of Indian exports that are going into the United States, which are labor-intensive sectors. One is textiles. India exports about 15 to 25% of its textile exports go to the United States market, and the other labor-intensive sector is leather. So textiles and leather are two big sectors as far as India is concerned, where they want to make sure that there isn't a direct impact on the large number of livelihoods that are dependent on the textile and leather sector. And number 5, there's also the high employment sectors like electronics, for example. India currently manufactures about 15% of all the world's iPhones. Over the course of this next decade, India wants to amp that up. In fact, Apple wants to amp that up from 15% to 25%. So those are heavy employment-driven sectors, and therefore India wants to ensure that this bilateral trade arrangement, this limited trade arrangement that is likely to be announced before the 9th of July, the deadline that was set by the Trump administration, has elements where India's interests, whether it's agriculture or whether it is labor-intensive sectors, are protected. Staying with the United States, Donald Trump versus Zohran Mamdani, the man who's running to be the next mayor of New York. That fight has gotten pretty ugly, from threatening to cut funding for New York City to now hinting at possibly stripping Mamdani of his American citizenship. But can President Trump actually do that? Can he deport Mamdani or take away his citizenship? And is this really a fight between Trump and Mamdani only going to escalate from here on as we get into the weeds of the mayoral election, which is in a few months from now?
My name is Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani, and I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
It started with a trademark Trump broadside. On Truth Social, he branded Mamdani a communist lunatic and vowed to make New York hot and great again. As President of the United States, I hold all the levers and I'll save New York City, Trump declared, threatening to arrest Mamdani, strip him of citizenship, and deport him.
They're worried that somebody that, like this communist from New York, someday gets elected. I can't believe that's happening. That's a terrible thing for our country, by the way. He's a communist. We're going to go to a communistic state. That's so bad for New York, but the rest of the country is revolting against it.
The trigger was Mamdani's promise to block immigration and customs enforcement raids in New York, and his calls for wealth taxes, rent freezes, and public grocery stores. Trump's message was clear. He's not afraid to use federal power against a city that doesn't play by his rules.
Big company.
Mamdani hit back hard. He said, Trump wants to distract from his war on working-class Americans.
Yesterday, Donald Trump said that I should be arrested. He said that I should be deported. He said that I should be denaturalized. And he said those things about me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history. Less so because of who I am, because of where I come from, because of how I look or how I speak, and more so because he wants to distract from what I fight for. I fight for working people. I fight for the very people that have been priced out of this city, and I fight for the same people that he said he was fighting for.
Standing before supporters, Mamdani accused Trump of fanning division to avoid accountability for his flagship, One Big Beautiful Bill, a spending package critics say guts healthcare and food assistance. He also slammed the president for threatening immigrants across America, saying, "If this is how he talks about me, imagine what he's willing to do to immigrants whose names he doesn't even know." Trump's threats sparked legal and political uproar. Could he really strip Mamdani's citizenship? Experts say highly unlikely. Under U.S. law, denaturalization can only happen if citizenship was obtained through fraud or if serious crimes like treason are proven. But that hasn't stopped Republican lawmakers from piling on. Tennessee Representative Andy Ogles wrote to the Attorney General, urging an investigation into Mamdani's past support for terror-linked groups, a charge Mamdani denies. For months, Mamdani was a relative unknown outside progressive circles. Born in Uganda to filmmaker Mira Nair and academic Mahmoud Mamdani, He moved to New York at 7 and became a U.S. citizen in 2018. But after defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, Mamdani became the face of New York's left-wing insurgency, a direct challenge to Trump's law and order narrative. His policies like free public transit, higher taxes on the rich pro-Palestinian advocacy, have made him a lightning rod for Republican attacks. Critics say Trump's Mamdani fixation isn't just about New York, but that it's about saving face after setbacks in Washington. His One Big Beautiful Bill is facing rebellion within his own party. Trump is using a familiar playbook: paint the opposition as dangerous, foreign, and radical.
3 years since the Ukraine war began, Russia and Vladimir Putin seem to be in the driver's seat. Moscow has now claimed that Ukraine's eastern Luhansk region has been entirely conquered, making it one of the first of 4 eastern Ukrainian regions that Russia has annexed fully. What happens next in the war? President Trump wants to end all wars, including this one, but will he be able to do that? He's not met with much success, certainly not in the last 3 or 4 months that he's been president. Or is Vladimir Putin taking Donald Trump for a royal ride? I dive a little deeper. Russia pounded Ukraine over the weekend with hundreds of drones and missiles. The Ukrainian authorities confirmed this to be one of the largest assaults since this war began more than 3 years ago. Strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure were reported across the length and breadth of the country, including, in quite a rare instance, in western Ukraine, where Russia has hit much less frequently in these last 3+ years. The attack was the latest in a series of escalating Russian air assaults, with Moscow repeatedly setting new benchmarks for the number of weapons that were used. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia had launched more than 500 drones and missiles overnight. That is the highest number that's been recorded in a single night so far. The figure includes non-lethal decoy drones, which are designed to confuse Ukrainian air defenses. Russia has begun using on a mass scale these decoy drones just in the last 1 year in order to try and disable Ukraine's air defenses. Ukraine's military is forced to use its limited stockpile of air defense missiles to counter Russia's large swarms of drones. Now, military experts say that these are aimed at overwhelming Ukraine's air defense units, which are stationed on the ground. The air defense missiles are the only weapons that are capable of shooting down some of these incoming missiles and drones. Ukraine's Air Force has also said that about 90% of the Russian drones were intercepted, they were disabled by electronic jamming, or simply crashed without causing any damage because they happened to be decoys and they did not have any explosive material on them. But the Ukrainian Air Force reported the death of a pilot who crashed his American-designed F-16 jet as he was trying to repel the Russian assault. Ukraine uses fighter jets to shoot down incoming missiles because there's a lack of enough ground-based air defense systems. One of the rare instances of this F-16 being downed in the conflict since this war began. The Air Force of Ukraine has said that this particular pilot who was riding this F-16, he had shot down 7 aerial targets, but he went down with his jet after it was damaged in the attack. A report released last month by the Center for Strategic International Studies, which is an American think tank, said that Russia has significantly ramped up its use of drones, particularly in the last year. They have increased from approximately 200 drones launched per week on average to more than 1,000 per week by the end of March this year. Given the current pace of attacks, Russia may exceed 5,000 drone launches in the month of June alone, which would be a record for the conflict. Ukrainian leader Zelensky has also been lobbying with President Donald Trump of the US to try and let Ukraine purchase American-designed Patriot air defense systems. The Patriots are really the only ones that are reliably capable of shooting down Russian ballistic missiles. Trump, while he was at the NATO summit last week, refused to meet Zelensky separately, but he did suggest that he was open to sending more Patriots to Ukraine, although it was unclear whether he meant the batteries that propel the air defense systems or whether he was going to give just the ammunition while leaving the surface equipment untouched. He also did not clarify whether he wanted to donate these to Ukraine or whether Ukraine would have to spend money and purchase these from the United States. Russia's summer offensive is gaining ground significantly in eastern Ukraine. This was launched back in May. It's now showing tremendous battlefield gains, and this is across multiple fronts. The playbook is to use probing and attacking tactics with small, fast-moving units as the fighting escalates every single day. With its advances, Russia has now shifted the advantage on the battlefield. In May, Russia seized nearly 170 square miles. That was more than double of what it gained in April. This data has been released by Deep State, which is a Ukrainian group which maps the conflict using footage of the combat. In the month of June, that figure of how much territory Russia has managed to capture is expected to be in the range of 200 square miles. That is one of the highest monthly gains. Most of these gains have come south of Konstantinivka, which is in the Donetsk region. It's close to the Russian border in the northern Sumy region as well. These are the two predominant areas where Russia is making deep advances and at a rapid pace. Both sides have also now turned to new tactics. They're using motorcycles, they're using civilian cars to quickly cross open terrain. Ukraine, which relies heavily on drones to hold its positions, is also using civilian vehicles to resupply its defensive lines. Russia, on the other hand, is using these civilian vehicles, motorbikes and cars in frontline assaults. The fighting is intensifying even as the ceasefire talks brokered by the United States have mostly collapsed. In recent months, Russian troops have captured at least a dozen villages in Sumy. The advance there is tiny, but it's in very frequent steps and combined with small assault groups, often just 2 or 3 Russian soldiers, who probe Ukrainian positions in waves. The city of Sumy is home to about 200,000 civilians, including many who've been displaced from the fighting along the border. The city of Sumy is now under growing threat as Russia advances. Russian forces overran Sumy in the initial invasion in early 2022, but then Ukraine managed to recapture it later that year. Konstantinivka, which is a Ukrainian operations hub, will likely become the next main effort for Russia in the coming months. The first step is to try and isolate the city from multiple directions in what they call a semi-encirclement. In some areas close to Konstantinivka, Russia has the manpower advantage against Ukraine, sometimes up to 20 men as against 1 Ukrainian soldier. At the same time, frontline airstrikes have also intensified, even after Ukraine destroyed at least a dozen Russian strategic bombers as part of that stealth operation it carried out in May. At the start of May, Russia was carrying out about a little less than a dozen airstrikes a day. That has now picked pace to about 17 in a day in the month of June. So throughout the Donbass, parts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, Russia has concentrated its drone units and is targeting roads, particularly threatening supply lines for Ukrainian defensive units. Russia claims to have captured large parts of Luhansk, which is the second biggest part of the Donbass region. Analysts say the Russian advances in Donbass follow a systemic pattern. The troops first isolate Ukrainian positions. They target the logistics and defense supply lines and reinforcements with drones. Then they pound them with artillery and aerial assaults, and then repeat that cycle further deep down the line. So far, it seems to be working well for Russia. So much so, many are saying that the summer of 2025 is proving to be Putin's second wind. All right, so how is this expected to play out? I want to go across to Daniel Fried. He's a veteran American diplomat. He's been ambassador in Russia. He's been tracking the Russia-Ukraine war since it started. Thanks very much, Ambassador. So 3 years since this Ukraine war began, Russia seems to be developing some kind of edge on the battleground. At least that's what the claim is from the Kremlin. They say that they've conquered all of Luhansk. They're also really closing in on the northern city of Sumy. How do you see the battlefield advantage, or at least the battlefield momentum, shifting on the ground? Do you think the Russians have the battlefield momentum now, particularly in the last month and a half or so?
The Russians are advancing on the ground, but neither decisively nor quickly. We've seen this before. The Russians often announce big offensives. They gain some ground, but the Ukrainian lines have never broken. The Russian gains are slight, at least so far, and Russian casualties are very high. Now, this time it could be different. There's always a chance the Russians will break through, but so far they have not done so. And their advances on the ground are coming at great costs. Remember, Russia is a much larger, much more populous country than Ukraine. The Ukrainians have held them off for over 3 years. The Russians are making gains sort of on a World War I level, very slowly and at very high cost, at least for now. The Russians are also involved in basically terror bombing of Ukrainian cities, targeting and killing civilians, hoping to demoralize the Ukrainians. And we know that this kind of tactic actually doesn't work very well. Okay. So the Russians claim victory in the war, but they have made this claim many times before. We'll see. So far, skepticism seems the proper reaction.
But Ambassador, as much as President Donald Trump would want to have a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, that ceasefire has been very elusive. In fact, would it be fair to say that the talks, whatever happened, I think a month and a half ago, there were the last set of talks that happened between Russia and Ukraine, of course, brokered by the United States. Those talks have pretty much stalled. We are not seeing any of these parties talking about, the next round of talks. So the question then is, can the United States broker a truce between Russia and Ukraine? And is it fair to say that President Putin of Russia has been using this stalled phase, this last month and a half, the summer offensive, as it were, using the stalled phase in the talks to have battlefield advances on the ground?
Well, it's certainly fair to say that the Russians so far have not been serious about the talks. They've put on the table maximalist demands, which include a demand that Ukraine withdraw from areas that Russia claims but has not managed to conquer. The Russians are demanding basically Ukrainian surrender, something they have not yet won on the battlefield. So the Russians are not serious at all. The question is, first, are there any talks going on privately between the U.S. and the Russians? This is possible. There may be a back channel in motion. And whenever there is silence, I wonder publicly, which there sort of has been about the talks, I wonder whether something is going on. But so far, at least according to what is publicly known, the Russians are not serious about negotiations, but the Ukrainians are. The Ukrainians have agreed to a ceasefire in place without conditions. The Russians have not. Trump has said that he wants a ceasefire without conditions, but he has not yet taken steps to push Russia into accepting the ceasefire the way he earlier took steps against Ukraine. So the Russians are simply folding their arms and waiting for the Ukrainians to cave and for the Americans to give up. We'll see what Trump does. But so far, there is nothing serious in the talks.
All right. Ambassador Daniel Fried, former U.S. ambassador, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. Thank you. So you've seen the big arc lights here, the flashy cameras, but beyond all of this, journalism is all about hard work. So if you have it in you to make a name for yourself in this hyper-competitive industry, then let CNN News 18 be your platform.
Co-presented by This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar refutes Trump's India-Pakistan ceasefire claims. He said, and I quote, "Even today, the central factor in relationship between us is India and United States. When I am looking at ties with US, a lot about it is about trade, tech, mobility, defense, and ceasefire was negotiated between DGMOs. External Affairs Minister also slammed the global community's selective approach to terrorism, highlighting how some countries only take strong positions when they themselves are targeted. So this is what External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has once again highlighted, that there was no role played by President of United States Donald Trump in the cessation of fire between India and Pakistan. It was Pakistan who called at to our DGMO, and then at the level of DGMO, this understanding happened between both the countries. And also importantly, S. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, highlighting this fact that there are certain countries who do not really talk about terrorism. When it comes to them, then they only come out and speak. We have a reaction. Let's listen in.
What we have communicated very clearly is we mean it when we say there is zero tolerance for terrorism. Now, and we also, if you look back at Prime Minister's address to the nation after the cessation of firing on 10th of May, there were some very clear messages which came out of that. So it's really for the terrorist groupings and for their sponsors to absorb and to reflect on those messages. Now, I don't think we are going to spell out if this happens, we will do that. I mean, no government does that. The record of what happened at that time was very clear, and the ceasefire was something which was negotiated between the DGMOs of the two countries. So I will leave it at that.
There you heard India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar saying in no uncertain terms that there was no role United States played in cessation of fire between India and Pakistan. And also the second important point that he raised about the selective approach of the countries on terrorism. My colleague Siddhant Mishra is with us on the phone line. Siddhant, talk us through about these two major statements made by S. Jaishankar, whether about the role of United States between the India and Pakistan secession, and secondly, the selective approach of the countries on terrorism.
Well, Minister Jaishankar was addressing a press conference in Washington, D.C., and in fact, he did take up all the questions from the journalists. And when he was asked about how, when it comes to taking position on terrorism, then some countries don't take tough positions when it has not impacted them. So, to which Mr. Jaishankar said very clearly that, in fact, he slammed the global community's selective approach to terrorism, highlighting how some countries only take strong positions when they themselves are targeted. In fact, he also went on to say that as far as India's position on terrorism is concerned, that when terror attacks happen elsewhere outside India, we have largely followed the same position that we have taken when when terror attacks happen in India. So, citing India's example, Jaishankar said that, there may be countries, those who take selective positions when it comes to terror attack, but India's position has always been consistent. Coming to the mediation done by President Trump, etc., when he was asked about it, so he, explained India-US relationship to the media first. He said that even today, the central factor in the relationship between
Viewers, let's talk frankly tonight. India has suspended the Indus Water Treaty with Pakistan after the Pahalgam attack. India did this because we were told the Modi government doesn't believe that blood and water can flow together. The idea is to put pressure and make the people of Pakistan suffer just as much as the people of our great nation suffer when our brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers are snatched from us